Hey, what's going on YouTube? Today I'm going to be talking about my lightning blast build that I've been working on. I want to thank Pinching Loaf for the original idea. He's the one who kind of came up with the idea, or the person that I came across online when doing research for Rune Master builds and kind of getting inspiration. He definitely had a big part in the way I managed the skill and like some of the choices I made. So I do want to shout him out. I'll put his build also in the description of the video so you can go check out his version if that interests you. He has a very long video, long form video about the build, explaining kind of how his build is pushing corruption. And I also want to preface that this build is currently very bare bones in the form that I have it, and it is well pushing through 300 corruption, blasting through 300 corruption with no problems. And I could see it in its current form where it is right now. I could see it getting to 500 corruption, and it is very half-baked in the sense that a lot of the gear is not very good. It's easy to farm. There's a lot of stuff on here that you're going to see that you're going to go, oh, okay, that gear isn't that great. Like my gear for this build is not great, and it is pushing corruption just absolutely fine. So it is a build that is easy to make. There's a lot of uniques in it that are quite simple to farm for. It makes it very COF viable. I think the one thing that's probably the hardest to farm besides Omnis is the level of Lightning Blast Exalted Helmet that you need to slam into Bone Clamor, and I will go over that when we get to the gear. But obviously +4 to Lightning Blast is hard to farm. It's rare, it's tier 7, but you can easily get +3 to Lightning Blast to work on this build. That extra level is not that necessary. But with that being said, let me go through the skill trees we got here. So Lightning Blast is level 27. You only really need it to be level 26, and you can even get away with level 25 if you need to. So this is our bread and butter of the build, right? It's the skill that's going to be putting out the damage. And basically the way it works is we're stacking spark charges off of our lightning blast, and they're going to deal a lot of extra damage. And these spark charges are going to stack up when we do things like double cast and quadruple cast, making it a phenomenal additive multiplicative damage bonus. Some of these quad casts deal upwards of 60,000-70,000 damage per hit. Like, I've seen some crazy numbers come off this build per just attacking once with lightning blast. The skill is very powerful with the spark charges, so you want to make sure that you're getting your spark charges, and then you also want to make sure you're getting your overcharge and hypercharge. Now the interesting thing is that because this spark charge stacking is like additive and just like piles on itself, basically doubles the damage, triples the damage, quadruples the damage based on how many casts you get. It really does make you want to stack crit the best possible way you can. So do focus on trying to crit cap. The only downside about this build is we cannot run Peak of the Mountain because we are running Twisted Heart, and you can't. So we leech in order to keep our health high so that Twisted Heart continues to function properly. And if we cannot leech when you deal critical strikes on your helmet, it's going to mess up our entire ward generation system. So we can't run Peak of the Mountain. So apart from the spark charge stacking area here, we're also getting 3 points into Storm Razor for extra base crit, which is very helpful for managing our crit, because our crit, we're not even capped. It is very difficult to push crit in this specific build in the way I have it set up. And then we have Lightning Attunement. So because we are casting so fast, and because Lightning Aegis lasts so long, we only need it to be a 5% chance to cast Lightning Aegis on Lightning Blast cast, but we do need it. This is a 25% less damage taken buff. It is an extremely powerful defensive layer. This build is deceptively tanky because of its very intricate defensive layers, and one of them is always having Lightning Aegis up. As you can see, if I just hold right click here, there it is. You see, it didn't take long for it to come. And if we just hold right click forever now, that Lightning Aegis is never going to go away. it's always sticking around now. So once you get it once, it's like you're not losing that lightning aegis. So lightning aegis, very very powerful defensive layer. And then, of course, we have arcing power, searching influence, and closed circuit, so that we're getting as many chains as possible. That's, again, going to stack up spark charges, especially if the pack of enemies are all combined or close to each other. It's going to make for overlapping damage with spark charges, especially because we're running Fragment of the Enigma, so the AoE of the spark charge is actually quite large. So there is going to be overlaps there. And then we have volatile lightning. We have 1 point into shock chance on volatile lightning. This is the flex point. You can easily take this point out if you only have +3 to lightning blast. And then if you only have +2 to lightning blast, I would take out the searching influence as well. So I would take out volatile lightning and then searching influence. Or if you like the chain range, I would take out a point into out of Storm Razor as your second option. But volatile lightning is definitely a flex pick, but the reason I have it is because the shock chance is granting us bonuses with our chest piece static shell. Again, I will go over gear in a minute, but we do want a little bit of extra shock chance to make sure that the enemy is always getting at least shocked to 1 stack at a minimum. Next, we have Flame Ward. Nothing surprising here. We have changed up the tree to my typical norm, and that's because for Runic Invocation to work, we need to have this be a cold-based skill, so we do convert it to cold, and therefore, since we're already over here, we're getting Frost Guard for extra armor during Flame Ward as well, and then of course we're taking Barrier. You cannot go without this. Less hit damage by 40% is tremendous. 30% less elemental damage taken, again, tremendous. Some ward retention, some extra duration and mana efficiency. And that's generally that tree. It's just a huge guard skill. It's very great defensive layer. And we have it up quite often because our cooldown recovery is quite good. We get it for once every 8 seconds, which sounds like a long time. But when you think about it, you're only really going to be using it when you are in need of, like, say you like flame rush into a pack and then you just hit that flame ward and then you kill the pack, blah 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 blah, and then you walk and then you're already basically done, and then next pack you zoom in, you hit the flame ward, you go again, right? So it is pretty good on timing. It's not bad. 8 seconds seems to be comfortable timing for flame ward if you can remember to keep spamming it. Next up, we have a Runic Invocation, and again, nobody's going to be surprised with how this Runic Invocation tree looks. We have 23 levels into it, but only 22 of the levels really matter, and only 20 of them are super important. So for any reason, if you end up with 20 levels here, there's only 20 levels that are mega important. And that would be the 4 Transcriber Power, 4 Attuned Approach, 3 Rune Slinger, Inscribed Patterns 3, and then Author of Arcana, Immutable Order, and Adept Rune Scribing. What we don't need really is Ward of Heorot and Elementalist Call. These points are definitely flex points. You definitely don't need them. But what we do want is everything else here, especially Immutable Order. It should be the first thing you go for. You should go 1, 2, 3, 4 and get there as soon as possible, because it is exactly how we get our Runic Invocation that we want. Very important. Now we'll go over our Runic Invocation in a second here. For our next skill, we have Frostwall. Frostwall's plays a very powerful role in this build. It is not just situational. This is something you're going to be dropping quite often. Even if you're not walking through it and just using it as a way to do extra lightning, it is actually incredible damage. And if you put it on an enemy, it curses them with a brand, which in our passive tree makes it so that we deal additional damage. So it is actually quite important to, particularly on things like boss fights, get Frostwall on the enemies so that you can deal extra damage, because we do brand the invaders here. We're then also swapping Frostwall to fire, again, important for the Runic Invocation that we're casting. And then besides that, we're mainly just focusing on getting as many lightning blast notes we can get for the tree, and then we're also going to get some mana efficiency and ward gain here, and then we're going to get cleanse ailments and some extra haste and frenzy from it as well. So this just gives us some extra speed when we run through it, and as well as it cleanses us the first time we run through it. And so if we zip through it and then we start casting, we're going to have a tremendous amount of extra cast speed. So it is a very powerful buff in that sense, but it is also a great debuff to enemies. And then lastly, we're leveling Flame Rush, and Flame Rush, again, we're converting the skill to the other element. We're converting it to cold, and we're doing this again for Runic Invocation, but then also the skill itself, we're just focusing on getting that speed and range so that it feels very comfortable to use the skill, and then we're going to get some damage reduction while we're mid-flight. And then we also get that buff to persist for a little bit after the Flame Rush. So we do get some of that damage reduction outside of Flame Rush. Again, deceptively tanky build. We have all these weird defensive layers going on. And then we're getting Frenzy as well on exit. So it is very good. And the Flame Rush is on a very short cooldown, making it a very mobile skill for us. It's only on a 1.9 second cooldown. So we are constantly casting Flame Rush to get places, and it is a very nice feeling when you're running echoes to have this up all the time. Basically, the playstyle for echoes is until you find your objective, you're just kind of zipping, dropping a wall, shooting, zipping, dropping a wall, shooting. And then when you get to say you see your objective, then you can just start Flame Rush, drop wall, and keep going. Flame Rush, drop wall, and keep going. Flame Rush, drop wall, and keep going. And these flame walls will zap your enemies behind you, so you don't have to stop to shoot them. You can just keep doing that. It zooms, it feels really comfortable in echoes, I have noticed. It is great for echo rushing. It is very fast build. So last thing I want to go over here about the skills is the Runic Invocation that we're casting. So it is Riowen's Frostguard, and I feel like a lot of people are familiar with how Riowen's Frostguard works, but I'll go over it really quickly. Basically, based on our intelligence, we are getting a large amount of ward, and then ward per second shortly after that. And that's about all we're getting out of it. We're getting a little bit of freeze rate multiplier, which is not that important in the grand scheme of it. It's mainly for the fact that it boosts our ward. So as you can see, we only have like 870, and that's degrading ward currently, right? But if I use this, all of a sudden we're up to 1800, 1900, 2000, 2100, 2200. So you can see this is a crazy strong buff. I haven't done anything else besides cast my Runic Invocation. You can see our ward went all the way up to 2600 from 800. And you combine that with shooting, you get that going. You hit your flame ward. I'm not even hitting enemies to leech for extra HP so that our Twisted Heart stays high active. We're already hitting 5k ward, and it's like no problem. So the flame ward, or the ward in general, is very deceptive in that sense. We sit at 800, but the moment we step into an echo and start fighting, we're already cranking out 4,000, 5,000 ward almost instantly. So the ward is deceptive. Don't let that fool you. Again, deceptively tanky build. So the gear, very straightforward. We're running a ladle because ladle gives us cast speed, allows us to quadruple cast as often as possible. We run Fragment of the Enigma for the extra bonus to spark charges. We're running Static Shell for the extra damage to shocked enemies. We're running Bone Clamor for the extra intelligence that we get off of it if we want to 2 LP slam a Bone Clamor. But also, if you consider it, if you have a high roll of a Bone Clamor 1 LP and you get Lightning Blast onto it, obviously I missed the int combine on this one. This one's very disappointing, but if you have a Bone Clamor 1 LP with a high int roll, technically it's more intelligence than what you'll get with a tier 7 Lightning Blast, tier 5 intelligence Exalted Helmet. So Bone Clamor is good in the sense that if you get a high roll and you put tier 7 Lightning Blast onto it, it's technically better than putting tier 5 intelligence on a helmet with tier 7 Lightning Blast. So that's what Bone Clamor is there for. Alongside that, we're getting extra ward per second and extra armor from it. It's basically doing everything we want it to do. There's no reason not to run it. It is pretty much the perfect idea and exactly what we want for the build, as long as the rolls are decent. This one is not decent, but if you get yourself a good one, it's great. Obviously, if you have a 2 LP Bone Clamor, you don't need one. You just need 1 LP for the Lightning Blast. But if you get 2 LP for your Bone Clamor, definitely try for Int plus Lightning Blast. And yeah, of course, if you only have 1 LP, which most people probably will, just get Lightning Blast and make sure it's a decently rolled one. Don't get 6+6 to Int, because then it's actually a downside. What you would want instead is like +10 to Int, +11, +12 Int would be great. Obviously, a max roll would be fantastic, but beggars can't be choosers, right? So just aim for like 10 Int or more. And then I have an Omnis. My Omnis has absolutely no LP, but if you do have an Omnis with LP, you definitely want to put Spell Crit onto this. Spell Crit Chance. It is extremely good. So if you get this Spell Crit Chance all the way, that's all you want on this. If you find yourself somehow crit capped, then you're going to put Crit Multi or Lightning Pen on it, but definitely Spell Crit Chance is what you want on here. Besides that, we're running Omnis to fill out some resistance issues. You'll see with my character sheet right now, I am well over res capped. If I take this off, I fall under a little bit in certain areas. But the only reason why this looks so good right now is because I am over capping in a lot of areas where I don't actually want to be, or I want to take those resistances out. For example, the helmet's giving me 43 Fizz Res. If I take this helmet off, you can see our Fizz Res actually would go down to 45. And that was totally by mistake. I should have Fizz Res on a ring. But obviously, yeah, without this and without this, I have 27 Fizz Res. So what this would do is would cover my Fizz Res if I also had Fizz Res on a ring. But yeah, again, my gear is not optimal. I am working with what I have. As I said, this is a COF build and it is very COF viable. So yeah, on the ladle, you're just going to want Crit Multi and increased cast speed. Cast speed is the #1 priority. Definitely get that if you only have a 1 LP ladle, and then Crit Multi is your second priority if you are a tier 2 or a 2 LP Mad Alchemist ladle. If you have a 3 LP Mad Alchemist ladle, you want to include Lightning Pen onto this. And if you have a 4 LP ladle, Lightning Pen and Chance to Shock. And that's what your ladle should look like if you end up with a 4 LP one somehow. Static Shell, you're just going for tier 7 Int. It's a no-brainer. And then if you somehow have a 2 LP one of these, then you want tier 7 Int plus Lightning Crit Strike Multiplier. And yeah, that's definitely what you want there. Fragment of the Enigma, I have Crit Multi and Necrotic Res. Obviously, the Necrotic Res is not needed. What you actually should have here is tier 7 Cast Speed plus tier 5 Crit Multi. I have tier 7 Crit Multi plus tier 5 Necrotic Res, but it should definitely be Cast Speed plus Crit Multi here on the Fragment. Prioritizing Crit Multi, especially if you only have a 1 LP Fragment. You should prioritize Cast Speed. Definitely prioritize cast speed. The rings are really half-baked here, but you just want tier 7 Int. Of course, tier 7 Int's hard to find, so tier 6 Int or better. And then spell damage, and then fill out your resistances. If you have extra room, then you get health on your rings so that you can get more ward from your Twisted Heart. For the belt, Strand of Souls with cooldown recovery speed. If you don't have a 1 LP Strand of Souls, which again, Strand of Souls 1 LP is actually pretty hard to farm for. So if you have just a base Strand of Souls, that's fine. But if you do get one with 1 LP, you want to try and aim for cooldown recovery. It'll make your Flame Rush feel a lot more comfortable. As you can see, if I take this off, we gain 0.4 seconds cooldown on our Flame Rush, and then we gain about half a second or even longer, almost a full second. Yeah, that's 1.7 seconds we're pulling off of our Flame Ward with Strand of Souls. So that cooldown recovery speed does make a difference, but it's not vital to the build. For our boots, currently I only have these weird Solarum Greaves, but actually I should have Telfoons on. I will put on the screen what it looks like with 2 LP, tier 1 Int, tier 7 int, tier 5 move speed on Telfoons is your best bet, because that gives you extra intelligence, as Telfoons has an intelligence roll on it. You can also, if you have Blood of Exile with 2 LP, which is super rare, so that's why we use Telfoons instead, farm for Telfoons. But if you do for some reason have Blood of Exile 2 LP but not Telfoons, then use Blood of Exile. They basically will do the same thing. Blood of Exile will actually make you go a little faster, but yeah, you will definitely pay the price if you go for Blood of the Exile. And then, of course, you have Foot of the Mountain as another option. Foot of the Mountain is probably better for a couple of reasons, but it will make you way slower. So for those reasons, I suggest Telfoons. It's a good middle ground. It feels good. You can basically ignore all the text about dodge and just focus on the fact that it has intelligence on it. It allows you to stack up as much intelligence as possible. So yes, we will be using Telfoons, but for the time being, if you don't have Telfoons, just focus on filling out your res, get some cooldown recovery speed, maybe some armor, and then into move speed are the important rolls on the shoe. For our gloves, we're running Swaddling of the Erased. Mine have tier 7 int. You just and chance to shred armor. You want to focus on getting Swaddlings with tier 7 int, and then if you can get that plus cast speed, it's fantastic. But again, hard to get that. So just try to go until you get int. Swaddlings are quite common glove to farm. Pretty easy to find these. You can hit these pretty easily off of the Rune of Ascendances, so consider doing that. But yeah, definitely just focus on intelligence. The rest doesn't really matter that much. Just get the int on there. And then lastly, we have Twisted Heart. Mine does not have an LP slam on it yet. I found a 2 LP one, and I haven't found a relic I'm happy with slamming onto it yet. But if I were to slam something onto this, it would be tier 7 int plus tier 5 cast speed would be best bet, right? And then of course, past that, you would want like probably just resistances, right? But yeah, those two are crucial. And so I'm looking for that LP slam, but I don't have one yet. But really all you need is a Twisted Heart. It can be 0 LP, doesn't matter. You just want to get that 5% to as close to 8% as possible. Unfortunately, mine is a 5% roll with 2 LP, but you do want an 8%er for sure, if you can get one. And then maybe 1 LP for tier 7 int. That would be a comfortable Twisted Heart, I'd say. But you can farm one for 0 LP. It's not the end of the world if you don't get LP on it, but it will help you in the long run if you do get LP on a Twisted Heart and you slam tier 7 int into it. For the idols, we have increased cast speed while you have lightning ages is the important part. And then, of course, you're going to want shared lightning damage or spell lightning damage or anything like that. But then also fill out your resistances if you need to using these. Like you can fill out your LE res using these, whatever you got to do to make ends meet. But the prefix here is the important part. The second half is just whatever you can find that works, especially when it comes to COF. It's really hard to find idols, so increased cast speed plus whatever else you can find on it is what you want there. And then I have 2 humble idols here for extra vitality and some extra resistances. Fill out my resistances a little bit and give me some extra HP. If you're finding yourself comfortable with your HP and your resistances here, then you're just going to want to add a second adorned idol. And for your adorned idol, my adorned idol is not correct. What I actually want is ward retention plus a resistance, or you can get ward retention plus shared lightning damage, or lightning damage if you have over 300 mana, it doubles the effect. That plus ward retention is great on the adorned idols. You won't get double the effect, but you will get increased lightning damage, and it beats having a useless resistance, right? If you don't need it. So that's what you do if you don't need the resistance, and that's what the adorned idols would look like. Again, I'm going to have my build in the description, but I'm also going to have a ideal build, what the build should look like. So you'll have an idea of what to chase for and how far I've gotten, and kind of compare like where you could probably get to. I have a feeling at the min-max levels of this build, you could push 1,000 corruption pretty easily. I'm on my way to 500 corruption and feeling quite good about the build. It still feels very tanky. It still feels very comfortable. I don't feel like I'm like dying frequently, only to some very niche and stupid cases, typically on player error, less than it is anything else. So I do think that this build has legs to move. For the tree, it is quite straightforward, and again, pinching loaf, thank you for the tree, because this passive tree is basically identical to his. I've made a few tiny executive changes, but they are not big changes. So as you can see, this is the classic mage 20 pointer where you're going into 8 int, and then to get over to Mage Flurry, all you're going to do is grab a point into Reactive Ward, a point into Elementalist, and that'll get you the Mage Flurry. You put 5 points into Mage Flurry, that gets you to Warden. You put 5 points into Warden, and you're out of this tree completely. Spellblade, we don't want anything here. It all stinks for what we're doing. For Sorcerer, we're just grabbing Arcane Momentum and Essence of Clarity. We're grabbing 6 points for that extra bonus, and then we're getting Calculated Destruction for the extra spell crit and Intelligence. And then, of course, we're going to get Rift Bolt so that we get that Lightning Leech. It's important that we get that Lightning Leech for Twisted Heart. And that's all we're doing for Sorcerer. In the Rune Master tree, it's quite simple. I know it looks complicated, but believe me, it's not that hard. We're grabbing Unsealed Mana for the 5-point bonus. So because our Lightning Blast costs 0 mana, we actually do get the Warden Mana Burst consistently. So we're going to put 5 points there. And then we're going to get all the int nodes that we humanly can possibly get. So we're getting the int in Arcane Focus and Mental Catalysis. And then we're getting Sphere of Protection. Again, we want to be shocking enemies as frequently as possible, again, so that we get that Sphere of Protection bonus. That's why I have that extra point of shock in the tree. Then we're getting Rune Word Cataclysm for the 5-point bonus, so that we're getting the damage versus low health enemies, but also increased crit chance is tremendous. So we definitely want to get increased crit chance wherever we can. We're getting 1 point into Neverlate and 1 point into Rune of Dilation. We're using Flame Rush so often that it's important that we get Rune of Dilation for that extra little bonus buff. And then, of course, it doesn't hurt to take some Neverlate. But yeah, mainly we're doing it for Rune of Dilation. And we only want 1 point because our Traversal skill has a 2-second cooldown. We can cast it frequently. Where we only need the buffs really for 1 second. Arguably, you could get it for 2 seconds. Like, we could pull a point out of Decree of Burning Wind and put it in here. That's up to you. I would say that's a flex point, kind of. Honestly, this 1 point in Decree is a major flex point. You can put it wherever you want, honestly. Inscribed Instruments is a no-brainer. It's 6 points for 72% crit multi. Why wouldn't you, right? You're definitely going to take that. Decree of Burning Wind, we are always going to have a Raw Rune active or a Frost Wall active, right? Or pass through a Frost Wall. So Decree of Burning Wind is up all the time, which means we're always going to have that double effect. So that's why I try to put as many points into here as possible, because right now this is technically doing 12% more damage to bosses and rares, which is significant. You can get it all the way up to 16 if you want to. I don't know where you'd find the points. Probably take out 2 points of int or something. But yes, this is doing work. And then, of course, we got Ancient Inscriptions for, again, more int. We want that int. But we're also getting cooldown recovery speed per 4 intelligence by 1% from Ancient Inscriptions. Very powerful skill buff there, I guess. And then we're getting 1 point into Runeward Hurricane because our cast speed is so high. We only need 1 point because we're going to get it up pretty much consistently all the time. 1 in 5 casts for it to go active. We're casting 5 times per second roughly, so it's going to be up quite frequently, if not all the time, once you get going here. And then we're getting Jagged Veil. We're critting so consistently that the ward gain on crit is very important, but then also we get more crit multi per 100 ward versus bosses, and then max more crit. It makes for very high damaging skills. Jagged Veil is incredible. And then we're getting Celestial Doom, the 7-point bonus. We're getting flat spell damage, but then we're also getting spell damage to branded bosses and ward gain versus branded bosses. We're branding bosses by using Frost Wall. All we have to do is throw a Frost Wall underneath the boss and spam our skill on them. Occasionally you can Flame Rush into them because we do apply a brand on Flame Rush as well. But that's not as important as just dropping a Frost Wall and going to town on them. You will get this bonus quite easily. And that's the passive tree. And that's kind of the build. So I'm going to definitely have a more ideal version of this build in the description. And again, do check out Pinching Loaf's 2-hour-long version explaining how this build works. And kind of the idea of it. I've made a few tweaks here, a few changes, but his build's also pushing very high corruption, and it seems to be a very strong and powerful build. Again, Lightning Blast is not just a cantrip, guys. Don't let that fool you. Thanks for watching so much, and I guess I'll see you in the next one. All right, take care.